Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a heartwarming and unexpected dramatic story about love taking flight, literally. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. How my mom met my stepdad. My mom shared how she met my stepdad. I knew they met at an airport, but I didn't get the full details until now. Several years ago, Mom was a brand new flight attendant, her dream job. She was heading to her gate, excited for her first ever flight as an attendant, when she gets stopped by our villain, Karen. The conversation went roughly as follows. Karen, excuse me. Mom, how may I help you? Karen, I need you to upgrade us to first class. Mom, I'm sorry, but you'll need to talk to the gate agent. I'm a flight attendant. Mom could understand Karen's confusion because gate agents and flight attendants wear the same uniform. However, they're completely different departments. A gate agent can't do what a flight attendant can do and vice versa. Karen, I don't care. You're going to upgrade me to first class. Poking Mom in the chest. Right effing now. Enter our hero, stepdad, who just so happened to be the captain of Mom's flight, was getting some coffee at a nearby shop and he overhears Karen's entitled rant. He comes up. Stepdad, what seems to be the problem, ma'am? Karen, finally. I'm Karen and I need to be put on first class on flight 123. Stepdad, that's my flight. I'll speak to the gate agent after you apologize to my flight attendant for your entitled behavior, or I'll have you kicked off my flight. Now, most people would agree to do this, but as you can probably guess, Karen isn't one of them. Instead, Karen then does the stupidest thing you can imagine. She tries to punch Stepdad in the face. What Karen and Mom didn't know is that Stepdad's a Navy veteran who used to train fighter pilots and is in good shape. The next thing Mom knows, Stepdad has twisted Karen around, had her arms pinned behind her back and calling for security. The flight ends up being late because Mom and Stepdad were giving statements and agreeing to press charges. Karen ended up getting pressed with assault charges and getting banned from the airline. That evening, once everyone finishes up, Stepdad comes up to Mom. Again, the conversation went like this. Stepdad, hey, I wanted to apologize for that. I heard you're brand new and I hope that hadn't scared you off from your job. Mom, nah, I have 2 kids. It takes more than that to scare me. Stepdad, still, I want to make it up to you. Are you free this evening? I know a really great restaurant in town. Mom, I'd love to. A few years later, they got married. This story's even more interesting because of how your mom dealt with Karen's spoiled brat attitude while your stepdad stepped in with unwavering confidence. Why did Karen choose to try to punch the captain? It was brave, but it was clearly a bad idea. Your stepdad's quick response was not only amazing, but it also showed how serious he is and how well he can handle stress. What about that follow-up? Really thought out. He was kind and sincere when he said sorry and invited her to dinner. It turned a bad day into the start of something beautiful. It's not just a story about how to stop people from acting entitled. It shows that links can happen in the strangest places. Now this event should make your family laugh, admire, and be thankful every time they remember it. What a wonderful way for 2 people to begin their story together. And our second story. Special class on how to manage your manager. This happened years ago, but I was reminded of it yesterday. I had a sales manager for IT systems who would keep an eye on everything. He also had a problem with coffee and nicotine, and he always lived on the edge. I could understand his desire to be perfect, but he died of stress in his 50s. He was the cause, but this is not his story. I asked the sales director for help and was put on a course. How to deal with your manager. I was glad that someone had heard me, and I was excited to start the outside course. There's a lot of filler in this course, and when it came time for the role play, I didn't like it because it wasn't very realistic and didn't show what I had to deal with. The cocky host said, "Okay, you be your manager." He then told X to play the victim and said, "I'll show you and the others how to easily handle this situation." So I became my manager, and I had learned a lot about how to be a total a-hole. I played him to the max. I was never rude or loud. That was never my boss's style. I shut down every argument he made to X. I was fully in character, being argumentative, petty, and obtuse, and more importantly, going back to correct earlier parts of the conversation. After 10 to 15 minutes, he told me I needed to be more reasonable and suggested I be more lenient. I told him that was my manager's behavior and I couldn't ask him to be lenient, but I did what he asked because I'd reached my goal and shown how useless his course was. He turned around at the end and said, "That's how to do it." I laughed and told her that you were clearly not able to deal with my manager. I told her that I couldn't ask him to be fair like you were with me. This class has not helped me at all. Change. They stopped using them after I told the sales director about them. They even started their own training classes to do the job. Your story captures such a perfect example of when a so-called solution fails to address the actual problem. The idea of a course on how to manage your manager sounds promising in theory, but as you so hilariously demonstrated, these courses often fall short of addressing real-world challenges. You didn't just follow the exercise, you turned it into a masterclass in highlighting how ineffective their approach was. By sticking to the personality and tactics your manager actually used, you exposed the course leader's inability to handle someone like that despite his claims of expertise. And our last story. Karen's parking war ends with police escort and for sale sign. About 5 years ago, my wife and I moved into a charming 1,500 square foot townhome right in the heart of downtown. We loved the area and most of our neighbors were kind and welcoming, except for Karen. Karen was a 65-year-old widow who had served on the HOA board for 8 long years. She was infamous for her controlling behavior, and when we moved in, several neighbors warned us about her antics. Stories of her bullying kids, ignoring pool maintenance, and harassing neighbors over trivial issues painted a clear picture of who we were dealing with. By the time my wife and I were married, Karen had started spending most of her time at her boyfriend's house in the countryside about an hour away. We thought her absence would mean peace. How wrong we were. In our community, parking rules were straightforward. Each resident was entitled to 2 spots near their unit, though not necessarily directly in front. Karen rarely spent more than a couple hours at the complex each month, so we figured she wouldn't care if our friends occasionally parked near her unit when visiting us. But Karen started showing up more often, occupying 2 parking spots every time she visited. This spring, my wife faced a medical emergency and was hospitalized for several days. Afterward, she needed extra care, so my mom drove down to stay with us. We now needed 3 spots temporarily, and I immediately informed the HOA and provided details about my mom's car. Everything seemed fine, until Karen came home. One afternoon, Karen banged on our door so hard it shook the frame. "Who the hell parks in front of my house?" she screamed, keys jangling in her hand. I opened the door, trying to stay calm. "Hi, Karen. Those are our cars. We let the HOA know my mom's staying with us for a few weeks to help with my wife." Karen's face turned red. "I don't care. Those are my spots. Move your damn cars." "Karen," I replied firmly, "there are no assigned spots. The rules clearly say—" "I know the rules," she snapped, trying to push past me into the house. "Excuse me?" I stepped in her way, blocking her entry. My dog barked furiously, startled by the noise. Karen glared. "I've lived here longer than you. I deserve those spots." At this point, my wife came to the door, pale but standing her ground. "Karen, please leave. We're not moving our cars just because you're upset." Karen huffed, muttering, "This isn't over," and stomped back to her car, taking up 2 spaces as usual. Karen's behavior grew worse over the next few weeks. She banged on our door regularly, even denting the frame with her keys one time. She started screaming about her parking spots every time we crossed paths. Once she even called out, "You're disrespecting the community parking like that." I began documenting everything. Pictures of her taking up 2 spots, her yelling fits, and her repeated attempts to intimidate us. One day I came home from the gym to find my wife and mom frantic. Karen's boyfriend's son and his girlfriend, 2 people we'd never met, were standing outside our home yelling. "You idiots think you own this place?" the son shouted, beer bottle in hand. "My mother-in-law pays good money for those spots. Move your cars or I'll tow them myself." "You can't tow our cars," my mom said calmly. "Watch me," he sneered, taking a long swig of beer. Karen showed up shortly after, parking her car behind ours to block us in. She stepped out, arms crossed, and declared, "You want to fight? You got one!" I had had enough. I snapped pictures of her blocking us in and called the police. When the officers arrived, Karen marched toward them, shouting, "These people are violating HOA rules. Arrest them!" An officer raised a hand. "Ma'am, we're here because of your behavior. Step aside." Karen tried to follow them into our home, but I blocked her. "No, Karen, this is our property. You're not welcome here." The officers listened to our side, looked at the evidence, and promptly issued a no trespass order against Karen. "You can't set foot on their property, ma'am," the officer explained. "If you do, you'll be arrested." Karen exploded. "This is my neighborhood. You can't do this to me." She stomped toward our porch and was immediately handcuffed for disorderly conduct and harassment. As the police escorted her to the car, her boyfriend's son tried to stir up more trouble. "This is bullcrap," he yelled, stumbling toward his truck. The second officer followed him out of the complex, pulling him over moments later for DUI. Both Karen and her son-in-law were hauled off to jail that night. 2 days later, Karen returned with her boyfriend and parked his SUV in front of her unit to claim a spot. They left for the countryside again, leaving the vehicle abandoned. I reported it to the HOA, and they promptly towed it. 8 weeks later, Karen put her house on the market. Karen certainly learned that living in a community comes with rules that apply to everyone, not just the ones she wants to enforce. Your patience, documentation, and persistence turned a chaotic situation into a victory for sanity and fair play. It's wild that Karen escalated to such absurd lengths, even involving her boyfriend's son in her antics. Her attempts to intimidate and dominate clearly didn't account for the fact that you were well within your rights, and it was satisfying to see her behavior finally catch up with her. The no trespass order was the perfect turning point. It showed Karen that her bullying tactics wouldn't be tolerated, and her arrest drove home the consequences of her actions. Bonus points for the poetic justice of her boyfriend's son getting nabbed for a DUI. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.